then I made a family with him, and so, I mean, that was what they call family of choice. And, yeah, and we adopt, or other times, in some cultures, especially before baby formula was common, people would have what they call their milk mothers,
yes.
where, yeah, so in Canada, or Maganese, your Naima. Yeah, so lots of different ways that we make families make babies. So yeah, please come in, sit up the front, and we'll be starting in just a couple of minutes.
In some cultures, like Arab culture, if you have the same suckling mother, then even though you're not biologically related, the other person is considered your brother or your sister. Like legit, like full on, like inheritance-wise and everything. It's pretty cool. Add to the lineage, I guess.
Yeah.
Separation of wealth. Distribution of wealth.
Yeah, well, and let's see. So a few more people are coming in, and while we're waiting, I want to say welcome to the library's iTalk. And I'm a librarian. My name is Victoria, and I'll be moderating our session. My undergraduate degree was in Asian Studies, but I did my MPhil at Hong Kong U many years after my Master of Library Science, and it was on cultural anthropology of pregnancy, childbirth, and first month after the birth among middle-class Hong Kong women. So, so as you can see, I've always had an interest in this sort of thing as well. Okay, so let's see, anybody else coming in? I see a few people walking down. Let's just, okay, so it's 12:01, and I think in 1 minute I will start the intro. Okay, well, let's start it. Okay, so welcome to the to our iTalk, The Science of Baby Making. I'm Victoria, and please join me in welcoming our speaker, Dr. Amin. Okay, we're very privileged to have him come speak with us today because he is a very, very busy fellow. A little bit about him. He's a PhD holder in life science, molecular medicine from here, from UST. Yay! Okay, so and can we see? So if you're a student here, he is your Tonghok, your Tongshui. Okay, yeah, he's going to. He is also an extremely innovative educator and researcher. He's teaching 6 courses this semester. Okay, and his teaching, enhanced by virtual reality and augmented reality and AI, has earned him some amazing awards, including the Educational Technology Gold Award last year and the Thetos Early Career Distinguished Teaching Award for 2024-25. So obviously, he's very interested in pedagogy. That means the science and art of teaching, and technology-based machine learning, also DNA replication, DNA damage response, molecular medicine, in particular cancer research, drug discovery, and biomedical science. So very wide-ranging. Now, this is an HMA W1905 class, so please, if you're wanting to get hours for that, make sure you've signed in. This talk is going to be recorded by VR, so please be aware of that. And we also may be taking photos during the talk, just so you can record what a wonderful time it was. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Aftap.
Thank you for the introduction. Yeah, I'm one of you guys, right? If it's not fun, why do it? That's the thing, right? So basically all my stuffs in virtual reality, pedagogy, it basically stems from an interest, something to do other than teaching, of course, right? But if I can link it to teaching and add it to research, it's quite fun. So actually my MPhil was in the UK as well. My undergrad was also in the UK. My biomedical science degree, I finished that and did MPhil in cancer research, so biomedical sciences as well. But it was on oncology, so looking at ovarian cancer research. So it kind of spawned an interest in baby making, so to speak, right? But from a cancer perspective. But then it got complicated and much more fun, right? So I do teach this in 2 or 3 of my courses, not the same material, but similar material. So without further ado, let me begin. So the science of baby making. So we have various taboos in society. We don't really talk about how to make a baby, let alone the science behind it, right? There's so many couples out there that have fertility issues, right? And there's some couples who have no fertility issues. It's all about compatibility, it's all about genetics, it's all about timing, okay? So hopefully today you'll learn something cool, you'll see something cool, and we can go from there. So, alright, this is my presentation overview. You can see we have some live GIFs. Upstairs we have the sperm entering the ovum, or the egg, and downstairs we have the developmental stages of the fetus, which is pretty cool if you think about it. Note that it looks not so dissimilar to a fish. In fact, if you compare a fish embryo, or any embryo, to early stage human embryos, you'll find that they're very, very similar. Suffice to say, did we all originate from a single species? Possibly, it's a theory, right? But basically I'll talk about human reproductive basics, we'll talk about the ovarian cycle, the uterine cycle, we'll talk about lactation, we'll talk about infertility issues, and we'll talk about some genetic disorders, okay? And then we'll finish off by looking at some ethical considerations, okay, that really do affect us, or people we know, alright? So, first question, have you ever wondered, how are babies made? We think we know, we really don't, okay? But, how are babies born? That's another question. And what is the meaning of life? Why the heck are we here? Right? Many of us have thought about that during midterms, no doubt. I still have PTSD, right? As I say. And why are babies so cute? Why do they look so cute? Right? And why are boys different to girls? By the way, any guesses who that is? That's me!
Oh,
yeah,
so cute.
it's in zoological gardens, right? I think 2 or 3 years old. Yeah, still rocking. Pretty cool. Anyways, so let's have an overview of human reproduction. So what is the definition of human reproduction? It's a biological process through which new life is created, right? And there are several key components. You have male reproductive system, which produces sperm. You have the female reproductive system, which produces an egg. And the whole process supports the development of a fetus, right? So what does it involve? It involves fertilization of an egg with a sperm. They must meet, right? Very cool. So how does that process happen? After fertilization, you get an embryo being created and the baby must develop. And this is known as sexual reproduction because babies actually inherit genetic information from 2 parents. So you get half your stuff from your mommy, half your stuff from your daddy. And when they combine the dominant and recessive traits, the balances come up with what you look like right now. You are literally the perfect balance of all genetic and environmental factors. And you won the race, you really did. Okay? So we'll talk about that. So why do we want to understand human reproduction? Of course, health and wellness, right? One of the key goals in life is to reproduce. Well, was considered in the past, right? Now we have different things to do, right? Just saying. Anyways, the knowledge of reproductive health is essential for concepts such as family planning, basically how many kids you want, you know, how much you can afford, whether you can provide them with a good education, and of course, sexual health. It's not all about making babies, it's also about self-protection, right? Now, it's also about awareness, understanding common causes of infertility. What prevents you from making a healthy baby, right? And what can you do to rectify any problems that you may potentially have? It also allows you to gain genetic insights. You can understand your family history. You can understand potential conditions that affect you. And it also allows you to seek help, genetic counseling. Okay? So that's why it's also important. Also, by educating yourself, the reason you're here is for empowerment, right? Knowledge is power. Information is power. Who controls information will dictate how humanity will live and prosper, right? You must educate yourself and also educate others. And you must encourage discussion. What was once taboo should no longer be taboo, right? It should be open for discussion. That's how we progress, right? We are an equality, merit-based society. We should also understand concepts of ethics, right? And reproductive technologies that can help rectify infertility issues. Certainly there are societal impacts. Reproductive rights, what ethics do we hold, right? How does population health get affected, so on and so forth, right? Government needs taxpayers. Are you a good taxpayer? Can you make a good taxpayer? All of these have a societal burden, all these issues. So we know we have boy parts and we have girl parts. In fact, that is known as your primary sexual characteristics, right? So boys have a penis and a scrotum, of course. Girls have a vagina and they also have a uterus, right? So these structures are now, from my understanding, being taught to primary 1 students as well. This is for societal impacts, how to protect yourself. Because there are, as population increases, there are societal issues. Awareness has to be created, but has to be done in a logical, in a ethical manner, right? You don't want to go into too much detail with little kids, okay? So this is your overview of the male and female reproductive organs. Notice the GIF, merging in and out. In fact, at one point in our life, we were all female. Then the genes kick in, and then the penis develops. Pretty cool, right? Biologically, by the way, females are superior to males. That's a fact, right? They're more hardy. They really are. Their pain threshold is crazy, right? Hey, never try giving birth, right? Just saying. Anyways, you also have secondary characteristics. They emerge at puberty, and they're induced by hormones, specifically sex hormones. So for example, women have estrogen. This allows breasts to grow, pubic hair to grow, their hips widen. Widening of the hip facilitates the exit of the fetus, right? Neanderthals are claimed to have died out because females had smaller hips and their babies' heads were huge. They used to die in childbirth. So wide hips are also a very good characteristic, right? Boys, we are programmed to appreciate these structures. There's nothing you can do about it. This is your biology, right? Testosterone. It allows your voice to break. So I used to sing like this, but now I'm talking like this, right? Legit, my teacher used to say I had an angelic voice in primary school. I still like to think so, but in a different way. So, muscle growth, all these things, body hair, you name it. That's your secondary characteristic. Now, what is the purpose of the reproductive system? Is to make babies, beautiful babies of different types and quantities, right? But it's a systematic approach. It's not just like make a baby, end of story, right? There's time, right? There's a time element. So we need sex cells, also known as gametes, right? So females have an egg, right? Males have sperms. Interesting. Women release an egg once in around 14 days in a 28-day average cycle. Of course, depending on your genetics, you may have a 30-day cycle, may have a 32-day cycle, may even have a 21-day cycle, right? So it varies, but generally 28 days is your typical cycle, and the egg is typically released on day 14 of your ovulation cycle, okay? Reproductive cycle. Males, you're constantly producing sperm. Like, you know, you produce a lot of it, right? And the whole purpose is to get these two things together. So there's sexual reproduction, right? Intercourse. You need physical interaction. Imagine this, if you don't have physical compatibility, can the two meet, the sperm and the egg? Imagine a Chihuahua, and imagine a Great Dane. Mechanics are very difficult for them, right? Of course, if you did it through artificial means, they may produce something that is viable and can reproduce. But again, difficult times, right? So physical interaction is very important. One egg has to fertilize one sperm. One sperm has to fertilize one egg, right? Get the picture. It cannot be multiple. And there has to be implantation, because without implantation, you're not going to get sustenance of that fertilized egg. Okay? So here we have your uterus, and we can see that there is a small ball implanted right next to the in the uterus. You can see it's in the endometrium, also known as a structure that is shed. So women, when you have your period, you're literally shedding your endometrium. Okay, we'll talk more about that later. Now, the term gestation is the development of the fetus, the duration, and that's how it looks, folks, from a cross-section. It looks painful, and it can be, right, depending on the woman, depending on her physical structure. The term parturition refers to labor, it's the act of giving birth. And lactation is the act of expressing milk. These are also hormonally driven, so we'll explore that in a little bit. But first, how are sperm made? Well, sperms are made in your testicles, right? Boys typically have 2, right? Basically, if there's anything that you have more than one, that means it's super important. You have 2 kidneys, you have 2 eyes, of course, you have 2 testicles, right? So this happens in the coiled seminiferous tubules, these little hacks right here, right? And sperm are actually diploid, meaning they have 2 copies of genes, right? You have the full set of your genome, okay? But that has to be halved, right? For sexual reproduction, you have to half the amount of DNA you have so that it can then meet with the other half from the egg and make someone new and unique, okay? So there's a whole process of that division, and eventually this leads to the creation of mature sperm, okay? Mature sperm. Now this is what a sperm looks like, and literally you pump out 1 million or so, a lot of them, right, in like a teaspoon. And you can see they have specialized structures. So there is a section called the nucleus, which has your DNA. You have your acrosome, which contains digestive enzymes that allow you to penetrate the egg, right? And you have a tail. You need to swim, right? You need a good swimmer. And as such, these structures are very specialized. They have half your DNA, they are motile, they have energy, so they allow for swimming. They have digestive enzymes for entering the egg, and that's your beautiful sperm. Now, let's look at the female reproductive system. You know, when I was in Mrs. Richards' class in grade 9. So that's, by the way, I'm going to put her on the spot. She's my high school teacher. Miss Tescoy, physics teacher, and also our head of house. When I was in Mrs. Richards' class, the first time I saw this structure was in year 9. And the first thing that came into my mind was, wow, it looks like an alien spaceship. It has its wings, it has everything, right? So it is actually a beautiful structure. It's a very powerful muscular structure. It has to be. It has to hold the baby and then push it out. Can you imagine, right? Boys, you don't have anything like this, right? The only thing comparable is maybe your tongue. Really, tongue is really powerful muscle as well. But you can see this structure. So we have a vagina, which is the receptacle. It receives the penis, right? So you have your vagina, you have your cervix, which is the opening, okay? And you have your uterus, it's the muscular organ. It has the endometrium, it's where your period comes out of. Get the picture, right? And you also have your ovaries. The ovaries produce the eggs and the hormones that are necessary, right? By the way, girls, you're born with all the eggs you'll ever have in your life. Think about that. So, technically, when your mommy was in your grandmother and her eggs were there, you were inside your grandmother, or half of you was inside your grandmother at some point in your life. That's crazy. Tell your appa, tell your grandmother this when you meet her next, okay? That's pretty cool. You're all once together, right? United in family bonds, right? And you also have something called a fallopian tube. Basically, the egg is released into this tube. That's usually the site of fertilization. So the sperm enter, they swim, 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 swim. Very eager people, very hardcore in their mission. They're like commandos, right? They have to get to the egg at all costs, and they do so sooner rather than later. They don't wait for the egg to arrive into the uterus. They do it earlier. So, how does that actually happen? Well, you see, the thing is, you are born with all your eggs, but that's double the amount, it's the normal amount of chromosomes you have, right? That has to be halved. And that process results in the creation of a secondary oocyte. Oocyte is just a fancy way of saying egg, right? That oocyte contains half your DNA, and then that meets with the sperm to make a 2N. So you have the same amount of DNA that you need for a healthy individual. And this is through fertilization, okay? Now, one secondary oocyte is released during ovulation, only one, okay? And here's what it looks like. So you can see here, this is just a GIF of the, is this works? Is it working? Are you doing your thing? You're not doing your thing. Oh, you're not doing your thing. Just 2 seconds. Oh, oh. So you have your oocyte, right? And the sperm enters the egg, the secondary polar body forms, the pronuclei develops, there's a fusion of the two nuclei. After that, mitosis happens, so cells split. 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, and this process goes on. And it's all controlled. It's all directed. That's the beauty of it. Even if there's 1 or 2 errors, the whole process has to be aborted. So we are perfection from a biological perspective. So you can see it comes with its food reserves, it comes with all its blueprint, its DNA. It's like a mini factory, if you imagine it. Pretty cool stuff, right? Here's what it looks like from a cross-section perspective. Yucky. By the way, it's not yucky. What is yucky is, I used to work in the histopathology department in Nine Wells Hospital in the UK. I've seen ovaries that big. Of course, they're not normal ovaries, they're inflamed ovaries, but they contain stem cells, essentially. So what do you expect in that big ball? Hair, partially developed eyes, even teeth. Pretty cool structure, actually. It has a lot of potential. So when the egg is released or liberated, there's a burst. So when if you're a woman, or girl, you may feel a spike, a little pain in your uterus, in your lower belly. That signifies maybe you have ovulated, right? It's also associated with a spike in your body temperature. These things will let you know what's going on in your cycle, the more you're aware of it, right? But you can see as the egg is released, you form something called a corpus luteum. It's very important because it helps maintain the pregnancy. It releases hormones like estrogen and progesterone to maintain the endometrium. That's why you don't shed your endometrium. It's to sustain the life, okay? So you see these structures, very beautiful structures. Yes? So this is the fallopian tube, by the way. It's not actually attached to the ovary. It's kind of just like close to it. So the egg is released, like, and then it floats into, it's wafted into the oviduct. It's a beautiful process, really. So even more beautiful is the fertilization. So we can see here that the egg is the sperm is entering the egg. Remember, there is only 1 sperm to 1 egg. Down here, you can see the change in the color, the sudden burst. That signifies light. So when one sperm enters the egg, there's a reaction of zinc ions, and this results in a burst of light. So you can view this as a release of energy. What does that do? That prevents other sperm from entering the egg. 1 sperm, 1 egg. Very important. Pretty cool process. It's insane. Intense. So here we have the fusion of the nuclei, so on and so forth. Okay, so the haploid becomes a diploid cell. Beautiful. Okay. So before we talk about the gamete production, let me switch over to my VR device. Okay. So in case you did not know what the orientation is, so I'm using this in teaching, by the way. I'm also developing my own VR headsets. Okay. So this could be fun for you visually. So you can all see that, right? So this is. Everything's good, right? Yeah. So this is a female anatomy, right? You go close to it. Ooh. This is your uterus. You can see, and we can actually pull it out. So let's grab the ovary. So that's your ovary. Let me close this menu. You can even enhance the size of the ovary, so you can see how these things happen, right? What the processes are. So yes, indeed, it does look like an alien spaceship. But when you look from the top, you can see there are fine structures. So you have your clitoris, you have your vulva, and you have the opening of the vagina as well. Bear in mind the urethra is where the urine comes out of as well. So this structure is highly compact. Why is it in my mouth? Ugh. All right. Sorry. It's very immersive, very real. You have to try it to feel it, right? Hopefully afterwards, if you have some time, we can talk more about it. So the male reproductive system, it's like the slingshot action. So, it legit is. Seriously, have you seen videos of how spaceships slingshot around the moon to generate momentum? This is literally how the system in the human reproductive system works as well. So sperm are legitimately, the muscular contraction forces the sperm out, it spins around, goes through the seminiferous tubules and the bulbs, right? It's where the nourishment and everything mixes, and eventually it just goes, it shoots out. It builds on the momentum. It takes physics into consideration. So that's your male and female reproductive system. Now, let's have a look at the sperm. So we showed you an image of the sperm. Let's have a look at the sperm. So this is our friend the sperm. He is very big, right? But yeah, this is his nucleus. These are the energy reserves, and this is his tail. He uses it for swimming, right? And of course, you have your acrosome, which contains your digestive enzymes. So this is your beautiful structure of the sperm. Now, let's look at the female egg. So you can see here, this is your egg. It has its various structures. This is the corona radiata. And this is your pronucleus and your cytoplasm, where all the reactions take place. So these structures also have mitochondria. Basically, mitochondria are there for energy. They help generate energy to propel various cell division activities. Right? So that's your body. And certainly, you can spend hours doing this, but because I'm restricted to time, let's play a little safer, right? If you want to see where the reproductive system is relative to the digestive system, you can also do that. I guess I'll show you something cool. My favorite is the heart, right? Let me show you the heart. This is where your heart is, by the way, in case you didn't know. If you have a heart, this is where it is. Funny. So check it out. Oops, I stepped out. Step back in. So this is your heart. Oh, it's a big heart, huh?
So I can't help but ask. I've heard that in pregnancy, a woman's heart will grow like by a third or something. Is that true?
Possibly. I mean, you imagine you have to deal with the additional volume of blood, right?
Yeah.
Additional nutrients. So yeah, I guess that would make logical sense. The heart does increase or decrease in size depending on the needs of the body. So you can actually go into the heart. This is what VR allows you to do. So you can see the chambers, you can see how the muscle tones are, how the layers are, how you have different valves in the heart that open and close according to the needs. So they have a lot of versatility. It's a very robust organ. Fun fact, the heart uses fats and ketones for energy, not carbohydrates. Pretty cool stuff. That's biochemistry. Nutrition, I actually teach it. Life Science 4550. If you're interested, drop one by. Right? Anyways, enough of that. Let's go back to the lecture, unless I will end up not finishing on time.
Very good time.
Thank you. That was fun. It's fun for me. I could go on for hours. Alright, so we were talking about the reproductive cycle. How is actually reproduction taking place? So we have something called the menstrual cycle, and which is a combination of the ovarian cycle and the uterine cycle. The uterine cycle is regarding the formation and the dissociation, or the dissolution of your endometrium. It's what periods, right? But then you also have something called the ovarian cycle, which dictates when the egg is actually released. So looking at this graph, you can tell from the number of days, day 14 is when the egg actually releases. And it coincides with the structural integrity of the endometrium. So this must match. So imagine if egg releases on day 7 or day 4. There's no endometrium to receive the fertilized egg. It's going to fail, right? So everything has to be interconnected. And this is done so via gonadotrophic and ovarian hormones. So if your hormones are messed up for whatever reason, it's going to affect your ability to reproduce. It's also going to affect other things, such as your bone density. Did you know women, estrogen actually aids in bone density? That's why women suffer from brittle bone-related diseases after, say, menses, right? After their period stops. So it's super, super important to make sure you eat the right supplements, have a healthy diet, and a healthy lifestyle as well. There is literally a biological clock, guys. And if you think it's only there for women, no, it's also there for men. Here's a fun fact. By age 20, guys, your sperm will have one sporadic mutation. And that doubles each year of your life. Same thing for women. So now you may ask the question, Dr. Amin, when should we reproduce to have less mutations? Biologically, do it before you're 20. Societal reasons, right? I don't know. Depends on you, really. As long as it's safe for you, life is good, right? Yeah, but you do carry on mutations. Your experiences do affect the quality of the fetus as well. What you've eaten, how much exercise you've had, what kind of abuse you've given your body, how much you've drunk that last Friday night, that will all come down and affect your reproduction. Okay. Think about that. So changes in the uterine cycle, of course, they affect your endometrium lining, so on and so forth. So it's very important, guys, to appreciate this. Suffice to say, if your egg is only released on day 14, does that mean you can get pregnant on the previous days? What do you guys think? Yes or no? We'll talk about that.
How long do the sperm survive?
Exactly. It's all down to the properties of the egg and the sperm. When is it released? How many sperm are produced? What is the quality of the sperm? Is it a male sperm or a female sperm? Ooh, you didn't know that, did you? Yes, male. Sperms have genders as well, male and female sperm. Okay, that's how we dictate whether you're going to be a boy or a girl. Okay, very cool stuff. In the olden days, they used to think, oh, it's the woman's fault. Oh, I didn't get a son. Grow up, crazy guy, right? It's actually down to the men. Right? Gender equality. Education helps you resolve conflicts. Right? People used to get remarried because they couldn't have kids with their first wife, and they used to blame the woman. That still happens in society today. It's crazy stuff. Insane. So we have male sperm versus female sperm. So now you know the properties of the sperm. This is going to tell you a biological hack. How to choose the gender of your baby. Theoretically. Right? And it works. So just say, okay? Female sperm contains an X chromosome. So what are we? We are a combination of X and Y chromosomes. Boys, you have X and Y, right? Girls, you have XX, okay? So female sperm are typically larger, right? They have a shorter tail, therefore they're slower in their movement, right? So in a race with a male sperm, they'll be like, you know, get the point, right? Timing. They prefer an acidic environment. So if you eat more acidic food and all this stuff, it can lower the pH of your body. It can create favorable environment for female sperm. But that will mean an impaired environment for male sperm. So your diet, your exercises, your activities can dictate what kind of baby or gender baby you produce. Of course, male, they swim super, super fast. They have a long tail, but they're very fragile. We're pathetic, guys, right? We die so easily. Like, it's like a football game. Someone gets poked. Oh my God, I'm dying. Kind of, right? They prefer an alkaline environment. Very cool. Now, new research has shown that actually the female egg can create chemicals or secrete chemicals that specifically favor a certain type of sperm from a specific type of man, for example. Okay? So it's not always up to the sperm. The egg can also choose which sperm fertilizes it. Kind of like real life, right? You can choose who you want to be with. Simple as that. That comes down to your immune system and various other things. You're actually biologically programmed to be attracted to more certain specific type of people than others. That's all down to your immune system and your compatibility. You do it at a subconscious level and it's intrinsic. Like sometimes when you're just walking in, you see someone and you just look at them, you know there's a connection going on. That's not a fluke. That is real. That's biology for you, right? We're trained to scan, okay? Anyways, we now know that humans have 46 chromosomes. They're organized in 23 pairs. The 22 chromosomes, they're known as autosomal, right? But the 23rd pair is your sex chromosome. It's your X and Y or your X and X. Get the point? That dictates whether you're going to be a girl or whether you're going to be a boy. So just threw that into the mix for your knowledge. Now here we go. An X sperm plus an X egg equals a female child. Or an X and a Y means a male child. Okay? Very important. So you must understand there is a role of the environment that you're in that will affect your conception or chances. So sperm viability can be affected by temperature. If the temperature is too hot, sperm viability goes down. So you need a cool environment. Boys, ever wonder why your testicles are... Ever wonder? It's so that it is aerated and it can have a cooler environment to enhance the quality of the sperm. It's not fluky. It's all programmed, right? Now, nutritional factors, so your diet, etc., it affects the pregnancy outcomes, of course. And certainly your emotional and psychological environment, it affects, your stress affects the quality of your egg and your sperm. It also affects the quality of your relationship. So it's not about just meeting together, repopulating, blah, blah, blah. It's also about the support mechanisms that are in place. If there is a single parent family versus a two-parent family, you have different dynamics. Sure, both can work, but certainly your environment will affect the stress you are under and certainly the quality of child you rear. Okay? Now, lifestyle factors, substance abuse, if you drink a lot of alcohol, if you smoke like there's no tomorrow. I have a thing against smokers, I'm sorry. Secondhand smoke, doesn't matter. Exercise, very important. In fact, I was on Instagram, by the way, you can follow me on Instagram if you want. It's Dr.Aamin, right? I post a lot of funny, well, cool teaching related stuff, but also writing stuff. So you can follow me if you want, but I was watching it, looking at Instagram, and some guy, he said, well, if my wife can spend 9 months carrying a baby and going through all the process, why can I not prepare 9 months in advance, go on a very strict, healthy diet, you know? Have exercise. That will affect the quality of my sperm, and it will affect the quality of my child. This is logical. This is biology for you. And it shows a lot of commitment as well. So that's very good. So there's also something called the shuttle method, right? How to influence the gender of your child, right? This is all theoretical, but it's based on biological theory. Okay, so it's logical, it's educated. All right. So it was made by this guy in 1960s, right? Dr. Landrum Shettles, right? He said that the time and the other factors will influence the gender of your baby. So for example, to get a boy, right, have intercourse closer to ovulation, right? You know that they are faster, but they're also less resilient, right? Same thing for the girl, it's different. Have sex several days before ovulation, right? So here's the thing. If the sperm can survive up to 5 days, a female sperm can survive up to 5 to 6 days, imagine, right? That means 5 or 6 days before your ovulation, i.e. day 14, you are infertile. You can have sex and not get pregnant. These things affect how you play with the environment you're in. And then once the egg is released, after day 14, it can only survive for maybe 48 hours maximum. So once it's up, you've ovulated, you know, I felt the pain, oh, I felt the spike in my body temperature. They're literally ovulation kits that dictate how to trigger and how to, how to trigger, but how to control and monitor when you ovulate. After those 2 days, you won't get pregnant until the cycle returns. So, not every day of the cycle, like some people are like, oh my God, I'm gonna get pregnant, No. It's a biology tool, there's a timing tool. Understand that, you can have safe sex. You understand? Good. So pH levels, so the environment of the vagina, or even how boys eat, they can affect the type of sperm. Remember, male sperm like alkaline environments, whereas the female sperm like the acidic environment. Okay? So of course, positioning, how you've had sex, right? That will also affect the distance the sperm has to travel. Okay? How quickly fertilization can take place. Of course, there are various controversies to this method, right? You're getting mixed results. Some couples report, yes, it's successful. Some couples say that it's not successful. It depends on the couple and how they follow through with the biology, right? There are too many variables to get this 100% efficient. But you'll know when it happens. Just saying. So, how is the embryo implanted? So we have the egg meeting the sperm, the egg then divides into 2 becomes 4, so on and so forth. And you can see how it travels down the fallopian tubes into the uterus and then it gets implanted, right? You have the wafting process, and you can see here how the cells actually divide in the top top left corner, my left corner, right? The cells are dividing and they duplicate, they multiply. Right? It's a crazy, crazy process until you get the formation of something called a blastocyst. So the blastocyst actually implants. That's where the embryo starts to form. Okay. Unfertilized egg is carried to the oviduct. Fertilization usually occurs in the oviduct. Remember, sperms don't wait. Fertilized egg splits and develops, and the endometrium allows the implantation of fertilized egg. Pretty cool process. It's beautiful. It's poetry. Just for your fun, an elephant carries their baby for 22 months. Damn. It's crazy, right? A walrus, 15 months. A marsupial mouse, 11 days. So it's literally like, dung, 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 dung. Is it like that? No. Unlike humans, most animals go through a process of heat. They're fertile for a specific number of months in a year, or days in a year. That's when they get fertile. Humans are technically fertile all year round. Pretty cool, right? Imagine if this guy was like, if she was popping out, yeah, it'd be a nightmare. We wouldn't know what to do with it. Probably turn them into a food item, make a marsupial burger or something. Anyways, this is what a beautiful baby implanted looks like, right? Gestation in humans, typically 38 to 40 weeks, around 9 months, right? And of course you need a placenta. The placenta is made, it's created from a mixture of both mommy and you. And it mediates nutrient and gas exchange and water exchange between the two. And it also protects you. So you can see here we have a lovely diagram, a lovely GIF of how the baby looks inside there. Kind of looks like a rat. Yeah, the embryos are not so dissimilar actually. Right? We share a lot of common genetic traits. Now, let's talk about the placenta. It allows for gas exchange without direct contact. Right? So you don't come into contact. This is important because if your fetus is genetically dissimilar to your mommy, then you can imagine there may be cross-reactivity within the immune system. In fact, the females are immunosuppressed to maintain the fetus. Do you know what immunosuppressed means? Basically, their immune system is weak. It's weaker on purpose. That's why pregnant women are told to avoid crowded areas. If they go to crowded areas, wear a face mask, because they can pick up infections very quickly, and their situation could deteriorate. So, very important concept this, right? Now, of course, the fetus may be treated as foreign, and it may be expelled. Okay? Simple concepts, very important concepts. Now, how are we actually giving birth? Well, you can see this process. So there are two hormones that play a big role, estrogen, oxytocin, right? So you can see estrogen is actually produced from the ovaries, right? And they enhance the oxytocin receptors on the uterus. Basically, what dictates your birthday? It's oxytocin. When your oxytocin spikes, that's when your uterus starts to contract, and that's when you're like, oh, I'm gonna push you out. Happy birthday. Yeah? Get the picture? And oxytocin stimulates uterus to contract, it stimulates the placenta to make prostaglandins. Prostaglandins allow for more vigorous contractions. The act of childbirth is a very demanding, very joyful process. It's not as easy as we think. Okay, it's very. So you can see even how the child is born. So it's not even the child that is being born, you also have to give birth to the placenta. Doctors have to make sure that the placenta is no longer in the uterus. Otherwise, if it stays there and it has no function, it can lead to infections and other complications. So you can see, by the way, anyone touch the head of a little baby, a newborn baby? Anyone touch it?
Of course.
It's squishy. It's like jelly. Do you know why? Anyone guess why? Exactly. There you go. If it's a hard surface, then imagine pushing that through. Then you get a Neanderthal problem all over again. Big-headed babies, small hips, and solid heads, basically. So it's very squishy. You can literally poke the brain. Yeah, don't do that. Unless you know what you're doing. I must confess that. But it's perfectly safe. Just be sure you have permission, okay? Otherwise you'll be in big trouble. Huh? Don't take risks, let's just say. All right. So, you may be wondering, where the heck are these hormones produced? They're produced up in the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland is right between this part, right? It goes straight through, it's in the center part of your brain. So this is your brain, in case you did not know, right? It comes in 3 parts, right? You have your cerebellum, you have your cerebrum, and you have your brain stem, okay? So this is what controls us, this is what we are. You take everything away, peripheral to that, this is the passenger in the vehicle. Get that analogy? Very cool analogy. So, how does that happen? Well, when you have given birth, oxytocin also causes muscles in your breast to contract. Breast ejects milk, baby suckles, the nerve stretching and the impulses, they trigger more oxytocin to be released. So it's like a cycle that's going on. In fact, some women may even produce milk just by hearing the sound of their baby crying. That's crazy. Doesn't that prove to you that we are not just this, we are a product of our environment? In fact, here's one cool thing. How many of you had midterms recently? Alright, how many of you pulled all-nighters? Yeah, don't. It's not good. Certain genes are activated in the presence of light. Certain genes in your brain are activated in the absence of light. So why do you need those genes to be activated? For reorganization and processing. You can imagine we're sitting in this room right now. We're constantly filtering out a million sensations in our, in the environment: touch, cold, heat, smells. How do we cope with that? We need to regulate, and that's what the brain does. It filters. So have enough sleep, guys, and girls, of course. No more PUBG after 12, okay? That's just saying. Yeah, PUBG is not cool, by the way. Just saying. People play it. I see smiles. Yes, I used to play World of Warcraft. I'm not gonna lie, I still do. I got my degrees playing this game. Yeah. All in moderation. Control yourself. Get the picture? Now, let's go to infertility issues. So what's the definition of fertility? It's the natural capability to produce offspring, while the infertility is the inability to conceive after 12 months of unprotected intercourse. This is your definition. Now, you can see, based on your age, hormone production, so key hormone for men is testosterone, key hormone for women is estrogen. You can see how they spike according to age, right? The ideal age for a woman to get pregnant is before age 40. Okay. In biological terms, yes, before age 20. But I would say 26 to 30 is a very good window. It's a relatively healthy window. Alright? And you can see the timeline, right? Best age from 18 to 24, that's what they're saying. You get the point? That's when you should do it. But as age goes on, infertility issues start to creep up. And of course you get mutations as well. Okay? Now, what are the common causes? Male factors. For example, sperm quality may decrease. The sperm cannot move, right? They cannot swim that well, right? You have age-related issues, so egg quality will decrease. Of course, you don't have an infinite amount of eggs you can reproduce, that you can release. That also plays a factor. And importantly, your diet, your stress, your environmental influences will all affect your fertility. Now, here are some sperms. Look upstairs. You can see the healthy ones. You can see one without a tail. You can see one who seems to be spazzing out. That's because his midsection is abnormal. And you can see one that has multiple heads. Awesome. Yes. So you can see, right? An erratic sperm will not get to the egg. Simple as that. And you have different abnormalities compared to the normal. Tail abnormalities, mid-piece abnormalities, and head abnormalities. Get the picture. Infertility, right? Now, that's why we have art. Art is beautiful. Assisted reproductive technologies, they are medical procedures that help individuals conceive, right? They include things like hormonal treatments, so on and so forth. So IVF, most common, in vitro fertilization. Eggs are retrieved from the ovaries, basically extracted, right? And fertilized with sperm in the lab. So you can obtain sperm, and you can obtain eggs. And in a lab, in a petri dish or in a test tube, you can bring them together, right? Assist in the fertilization process, so to speak. You also have injections of sperm. So imagine a sperm can't swim that well. You can take a single sperm and inject it directly into the egg, right? This can help in male infertility. You also have intrauterine insemination. Sperm is directly inserted during ovulation, so you have to monitor when ovulation occurs. You also have egg donation. So if something's wrong with your egg, you might get egg from a donor and use it to fertilize. But this is when the mother cannot produce viable eggs. You also have sperm donation, right? So a donor who has been screened, who is relatively healthy, you may opt for that. Of course, there are ethical considerations and disclosures there as well, okay? Multiple things affect us, okay? Now, you have embryo donation. Used embryos from other couples are donated for implantation. And you have surrogacy. Another woman is there to carry and deliver your baby. So you basically sustain her, you house her, and she gives birth to your baby. A baby that is biologically you, in many ways. But I'm pretty sure there are some influences from the host mother as well on your genetics. Consider these things. Now, what is the definition of in vitro? What the heck does that mean, right? It's a medical procedure where an egg is fertilized outside, by sperm outside the body, specifically in a laboratory setting. So in vitro means in glass. It's referring to biological experiments, so test tubes, petri dishes, so on and so forth. Whereas in vivo refers to the process of reactions occurring in a living organism. So you now know the difference between the two. So here's an image of in vitro fertilization in a petri dish. Right? You can see that a needle is inserting a single sperm directly into the egg. Pretty cool process. That's where it has evolved as a primary treatment for infertility, right? The term test tube baby, we hear it all the time. That's why it's called test tube baby, right? It highlights the laboratory aspect of the procedure. Now, there are many milestones, initial experiments using little bunny rabbits. Oops, sorry. Rabbits, right? And then, of course, things advance. And you see Louise Brown, she is the first person to ever be born through IVF. Very cool. And this was in the 1970s, 1978. Pretty cool, right? Very famous lady. And then things became more and more common, right? Technological innovations came into play. There was an impact from COVID. It affected IVF cycles. Ooh, dang. Not good, guys. So, present day, we have ongoing developments. Of course, IVF success is increasing. More and more people can become parents. But then you have societal issues. People don't want kids anymore, right? They'd rather have a dog or a cat or something like that. Get my picture? So, IVF represents significant advancements. So you can see what the process is like. You have ovarian stimulation, so you basically get your ovaries to make the egg. The egg is then retrieved and sperm is collected. You get artificial fertilization. Your embryo is grown, they multiply, and then subsequently you transfer the growing embryo into a viable uterus with an endometrium lining, and then you check for pregnancy, as indicated by HCG levels, hormone-based. Okay? So that's the whole process of IVF in a nutshell. Okay? Now, when is IVF recommended? When you cannot have any other effective treatment. If people have blocked tubes, so imagine if your fallopian tubes are blocked, how can the sperm enter, how can the egg leave? You have endometriosis, which basically means that your endometrium structure is irregular. You have ovulation dysfunction, so you basically, it's like PCOS, right? You cannot release an egg. You may have diminished ovarian function due to age, typically after menopause, right? Or male factors, so some guys cannot produce sufficient sperm, sorry. And you may have PGT, right, which is risk for genetic disorders. So say, for example, you know you are carrying a gene that will cause thalassemia, cystic fibrosis, things like that. You want to opt out of passing that genetic information onto your kid, right? Now, of course, female age is very important, fallopian tube issues, irregular or absent ovulation, low sperm count, unexplained infertility, endometriosis, previous fertility treatments, genetic disorders. Very big thing nowadays, okay? And of course, same-sex couples, so societal issues, health conditions, maybe cancer, right? So you get the picture. So you can see the diagnosis, right? And the miscarriage rates increase as the age increases for females. And the live birth rate for ART actually also diminishes. So even if you're going through artificial technologies to get fertilized, the older you are, the less successful they will become. So you have to plan and think ahead. That's why being educated and attending these seminars is so important, right? Get the picture. Now, you also have contraception. So you have condoms, you have diaphragm methods, you have birth control pills, patches, injections, you have intrauterine devices, you have permanent methods. So that's it. Basically you cut your tubes, right? They help. And of course you have natural methods. So if you're able to track your ovulation, your timing, you know, they also do affect. Bear in mind, for the latter one, say for example if you're sick, will that affect your ovulation? Or the time of your ovulation? Yes, it does actually. You have an immunization, you take a vaccination, that's going to affect when you will ovulate, if you will have a period at all. You get the point?
But you wouldn't want to count on it as a contraceptive method.
Oh, sure, exactly. Don't count on it. There are too many external variables that can affect this. Okay? Of course, consult a healthcare provider, very important, and consider the effectiveness and the side effects. Okay? Weigh the benefits and the disadvantages. So let's finish off by looking at genetics a little bit. Ever wonder why we're all so different? Why the heck do our family members look the same? Why do diseases run in families? This is actually a family from Pakistan. You can see the first generation, they're all like white skin, blonde hair. The subsequent generation have normal phenotype. They're albinos, right? Very cool stuff. It's genetics. It explains what makes you unique, right? Now, it's a term coined by William Bateson in 1906. It derives from Latin, it means from Genesis. It's a study of heredity and variation. So heredity is the passing of genetic information, or genes, from parents to offspring, whereas variation is the difference among individuals. So look around you, you have a lot of variation, okay? Now, what is DNA? It's your blueprint. It carries your genetic code for building an organism. You have your cells, they form tissues, tissues form organs, organs form organ systems, and then you have an organism, right? And each cell has your chromosomes. The chromosomes contain your DNA. And your genes are on your DNA, okay? They carry your traits, basically what makes you you. So, what is a gene? It's a length of DNA that encodes for a specific protein. Protein that has a function. Gene equals protein, protein equals function. Protein can have multiple functions. One can be involved in reproduction, the same protein can be involved in brain function, okay? So that's the beauty of life. We have roughly around 20,000 genes in the human genome. That's a lot. That's a big number, guys, right? Different species have different numbers, of course, and it all comes down to the brain, or the chief executive officer, i.e. your nucleus. It contains your blueprint, right? And proteins do the work of the cell. Remember that. So what do we mean by that? So for example, your chromosome, it contains your genes. So the gene for eye color, it has to be copied. It then has to be translated to make a protein. That protein, based on the sequence of amino acids, will have a shape. It will bend and it will change. And this shape will then allow for a specific phenotype to be shown. In this case, green colors, right? Genotype is the fancy way of saying your genetic makeup, all right? Whereas phenotype is what we see. So right now, you look around, you see this guy talking in front of you, he has brown skin, that's his phenotype, right? Genotypically, we could be very similar, right? But what we see is what is there. Now, genetic inheritance. So why do we need half stuff from mommy, half stuff from daddy? It's because we get identical genes from each parent, and they have different expression patterns. They can be dominant or recessive, and that's what shows up in your appearances or in your protein functions, right? They're known as alleles. They have different versions of the same gene, right? Of course, gametes, sperms, and eggs, we know that we get half our copy from mommy, half our copy from daddy. Each parent gives us a set. So if we just look at this diagram, you can see, for example, in the presence of an abnormal or mutated gene, and if your mommy is unaffected, both are unaffected, they're just carriers, right? They have a normal gene that does this job, does the job of the affected gene for the individual, right? You can see when they make babies, you may have received copies that are perfectly fine. You may receive copies that are irregular, but because you also received a functional copy, everything is fine. But if you get affected genes, 2 mutated genes, that means you're going to have a disease, or you're going to have a condition for that disease. This is inheritance. That's why it's important to understand inheritance patterns. It helps predict the risk of passing disorders to offspring, and it guides genetic counseling and family planning. I'll give you an example. If someone has thalassemia, it's a blood disorder, right? If both parents are carriers, right, the likelihood of a kid getting thalassemia is relatively high. You don't even want one kid to have it, right? What would that mean? It means the kid has to have blood transfusion for the rest of their life. Can you imagine? They won't be able to do it. May not be able to, other conditions may be debilitating. You don't walk, you're chair-ridden, you're bedridden. So that's why you must understand the power of genetics. Get a blood test done before you get married. That's my opinion. If you ignore that and get married, that's fine. You have alternate ways to make a baby a healthy baby. That's the beauty of science. Okay? Now, simple genetic terms. So we have dominant and we have recessive. So for example, in this case, if you inherit two dominant genes, so for example, if your genotype is big B, which is the dominant gene, then you will have the dominant trait, which is the black eye color or brown eye color. There's no such thing as black eye color, by the way. It's all brown, right? Different shades of brown. Similarly here, if you get one recessive allele, so small b, but you have a dominant allele, big B, the dominant will overpower the b, the small b, so you will have the dominant trait. But if you get two small b's, recessive, right, you will get a phenotype that is recessive. So in this case, blue eyes. You get the picture. It's beautiful. That's biology. Now, there are many examples of dominant and recessive traits. Examples of dark hair, curly hair, baldness, widow's peak, freckles, right-handedness. These are dominant traits. Blonde hair, red hair, straight hairline, round eyes, right? Left-handedness. These are all recessive traits. Now, what actually are genetic disorders? They're conditions caused by abnormalities in our genes or our chromosomes. Simple definitions equal single gene disorders. For example, cystic fibrosis. You have difficulty breathing due to inflammation and buildup of liquid in your lungs. And you may have chromosomal disorders. So for example, Down syndrome. In Hong Kong, they go through, I think it's week 4 or 5, I don't remember. There is Down syndrome screening offered. So that there's a preventive element to that as well. Okay. You have multifactorial diseases such as heart disease, and you have inheritance patterns. For example, one copy of a mutated gene is sufficient to cause a disorder. So even if you have a normal copy, still you're in trouble. So that's, for example, Huntington's disease, a very dangerous disease. You may have autosomal recessive diseases. 2 copies of a mutated gene are necessary for the problem to occur. So in this case, sickle cell anemia. Anyone know where sickle cell anemia is super common?
Sub-Saharan Africa?
Yeah, in Nigeria, even in parts of Asia, India, basically in hot, humid environments where mosquitoes are abundant, cause malaria. Sickle cell is actually an adaptation to survive malarial infections. You get what I mean? It's pretty cool, right? Mutations that allow us to survive. We're all a product of mutations, right? We weren't born perfect. We evolved to be perfect. Okay? Now, which is also very cool anyways. You also have sex-linked mutations. So depending on, like for example, hemophilia, chromosome X-linked diseases. These are all sex-linked diseases as well. So let's have a look at them. So this is due to the transmission of information from the 23rd pair. Remember, the 23rd pair of your chromosome is your sex chromosome. So XX for female, XY for male, and you can see color blindness. I taught this this semester. First time I had a student who was colorblind. He couldn't see those numbers. Yeah, very cool stuff. Very cool stuff. You also have Y-linked diseases. So if you inherit a faulty copy in your Y chromosome, werewolf syndrome. Very, very sexy. Yes, indeed. Get the picture, right? Whole body is covered in hair. You also have polygenic traits. So now, it's not just as simple as saying 2 traits, right? You have multiple genes that affect how you look. Your skin color, your hair color, your height, your IQ, your eye color, affected by multiple genes. Beautiful skin color, right? So height for men and women, affected by multiple genes. Eye color, affected by multiple genes, right? Now, environment will influence your genes, right? Where you are located affects how you develop, which hormones you produce, how your metabolism works based on your diet, right? Look at this. So in some reptiles, the temperature will affect the sex ratio, the gender of your baby. So imagine it's a very, very, very hot day along the banks of the River Nile, and your alligators are now reproducing. They produce more females. That's good. Imagine putting males, testosterone-driven males, in a hot environment. They're going to kill each other off. So that's a big problem, right? They'd probably kill off the females as well. The whole thing is that your environment dictates who you are, how you behave, what your gender is as well. Yes, even for us, our gender is dictated. Remember, sperm need a cold environment, right? They favor a certain kind of temperature, right? Many, many factors. So again, positive learning experiences, rich learning opportunities, good nutrition, good health, good exercise will all affect your phenotype and your genotype and then your phenotype. Poor learning environments, malnutrition, sickness will affect your genetics as well. Changes in temperature. A permanent change may also occur in your genes, or maybe a temporary change. This is known as epigenetics. Okay, there's a whole area of study. It regulates when genes are turned on or off. Sometimes when you're studying for exams, you stay up late. Some genes are turned off, your brain goes crazy, right? Get the picture. Now, nearly done, right? Gonna finish off by asking some ethical related questions, right? So genetic testing is very important. It's particularly there for people who have a known familial mode of inheritance. So you know someone in your family has an issue, so you want to find out if you're affected or not, right? So you can test the population, right? You can test yourself, right? There's also genetic screening, is when there's no familial history, right? The whole purpose is to prevent harm, so that the child is not born with any diseases, such as to limit pain and suffering, limited opportunities, anxiety, disabilities, right? We are a progressive society. We take into consideration every learning need, okay? So it's important for us to know this and prevent this and be more receptive and appreciative of differences. Okay? So here's a question. Perfect. You find out that you and your wife are both carriers for a gene that could cause your children to be severely disabled. Your child has a 25% chance of developing this condition. What do? Do you choose not to have children? Or do you take the chance? Think for yourself. What would you do in this position? Similarly, in another scenario, you found out that the child or your wife, they carry a gene for dwarfism. Okay? But there's a new therapy that can help rectify the gene before the child is born. Do you either allow the child to be born with the gene? Do you attempt a new therapy to repair the gene? Or do you get rid of the pregnancy altogether? These are questions you will be forced, whether you like it or not. Things like this happen. Okay. Sure, if it doesn't affect me, why do I care? It affects the society. It affects people you know, people you love. Okay, so be more appreciative of that fact. Okay. We're not in a bubble, right? We're a global village. Understand that. Okay. Another thing, case study. Another one. A company can now create a test tube baby according to what your parents want, right? It can make sure your child has desirable traits, make you more intelligent, blah, blah, blah. What would you do? Sign me up. I want my child to be perfect. Good robot, right? I'd rather let nature take its course. I'm not so good person. Well, okay, let nature do its thing. Or let's make a little bit of changes. Let's get rid of the baldness. Let's make him a little taller. Yeah? It's like window shopping. Ever seen this movie? Ever heard of this movie?
Yeah.
Do you know what's really freaky for me? Like, I give movie references all the time in all my classes. Like, I talk about The Matrix, I talk about RoboCop, I give them things about like cyborgs and things like half your generation doesn't know what the heck I'm talking about. I'll be surprised if they knew about Star Wars, and that's only because they made the reboots, right? Watch movies, guys. Seriously, they have a lot of good stuff. So this movie, Gattaca, notice Gattaca, it's in reference to your nucleotides. We have GATC in DNA. So smart, right? They do their research. In this movie, there is a utopian future.
What's future?
Basically, a perfect society.
Oh,
Utopia.
dystopian.
A dystopian. Basically, it's like the ideal society. Future, dystopian, distant. Okay. You can choose the traits that your baby has before they're born. So at the time of birth, you can take a blood sample, they will put it into a computer, and it will come out with a reading saying that your child has a 10% chance of heart disease. But they have a 99% IQ. You get what I mean? Watch this movie, guys, because it takes discrimination down to a genetic level. The jobs you get are determined by your genetic makeup, not necessarily your ability. But in the movie, the protagonist, he's a natural birth, and he fights the system. Watch this movie with your friends or whatever. Just watch it. All right? So next question. Down to food. An agricultural company has found a way to make tomatoes 50% larger by splicing elephant genes into the tomatoes. Would you buy the tomatoes and eat them, or would you just not do that?
How do they taste?
Now here's another question. When you buy meat, do you know if you're eating normal cells or if you're eating cancer cells? Think of that one, huh? Yeah, Dr. Amin just stirred the pot a little bit. For me, as long as it's cooked, as long as it goes through my digestive system and it doesn't affect my genetics, it's perfectly fine. And it has to have statistical backing, right? Not like this COVID emergency vaccination that we went through. This is emergency legislation, by the way. You guys took the BioNTech or the Sinovacs as an emergency basis. Basically, the benefits outweigh the harm. We don't know the harm, but now studies are coming up with potential harms. Heart diseases, palpitations, so on and so forth. Okay? Time tells. So statistics should help you come to your decision. Very important. So that's nearly me, right? So in summary, I'd like to say thank you, of course. Of course, reproduction is much more complicated. I gave you a nice little dose of medicine, allowing you to think a little different. Okay? And of course, ask questions. Some questions should be asked. Okay? All questions should be asked. All right? Observe people around you. Look at their behavior. See how they're walking. Right? It can tell you a lot about what they've gone through in life. Think of the possibilities, of course. Understanding people and the environment is the key to your success in any field you go to. Okay, think about it. Here are my references. Other than that, that's it.
Okay, well,
Enjoy.
thank you. That was really quite amazing. So now we have about 20 minutes for Q&A. And
Wow.
so after all of this very stimulating information, does anybody have any questions to start? I'll pass, since this is being recorded, I'll also ask you to ask your questions with the microphone.
Any questions? Doesn't even have to be on topic. I'm pretty well
Okay.
versed.
So how are trees and triplets formed, and
Oh dear.
is that also affected by genetics?
Of course. It's a very good question. How are triplets formed?
And
So-
twins.
And twins. So, of course, I need to do my research, but from what I understand, you can have multiple types. You can have paternal twins, you can have fraternal twins. It depends on how the egg splits and divides, how many eggs are actually released as well, and how many the sperm that fertilize them. So, for example, if you have multiple twinning pregnancy in which 2 eggs are released at the same time, and 2 separate sperm fertilize those, then you get non-identical twins. Okay, so the egg is different, right? But you may get instances where 1 egg is released, but then that 1 egg divides, splits into 2 eggs. They're genetically the same, right? They both carry the same genes, they're just different. If they get then fertilized by 2 different sperm, then that's another different terminology of twins. They could be identical twins. Oh no. That's a different terminology. Now, here's another thing. If the sperm fertilizes an egg and then that egg splits, then you get identical twins. There are many, many processes. But yeah, they occur down to your environment. So the conditions of your uterus, predisposition, maybe there's twinning in your family, right? Multiple factors affect it. In fact, during World War II, the Nazis they theorized that they went to Brazil. There was a doctor who actually investigated how to make twins. And apparently there's a village in Brazil that has a very high population of twins. So he somehow succeeded in many ways.
Interesting. Okay. Other questions?
It can be on any topic. It doesn't have to be related to this. Maybe it could be genetics, it's broad.
Okay, hold on.
Do you think we should remove all the like bad genes in our body, like those with cause genetic disease, if we could. That's in future. And if we should, by what means?
So, very good question. Should we remove the bad genes? Right? And how? Right? So, definition of good and bad. Right? How do we define a bad gene? A gene, I'm assuming a gene that can statistically lead to an abnormal condition. Right? Sure, why not? Right? But when you go overboard in excessive terms, which you remove the natural element, right, then you're affecting multiple things. I'll give you an example. For example, in vitro fertilization itself, right? You're removing the chance element. You're not allowing the egg to choose which sperm will fertilize it, and you're not allowing the sperm to race each other to determine which healthy sperm is going to fertilize the egg. In effect, doctors are screening out visually, this looks like a healthy egg, this looks like a healthy sperm, let's put them together. Do those kids have healthy lifestyles? They can, yeah. But sometimes they also have certain traits that are not necessarily desirable. For example, flat-footedness, when the sole of your feet is flat. That can also happen in a natural way, but it can also happen due to artificial insemination and so on and so forth, right? Now, how can you edit genes? There's CRISPR-Cas9 technology. There are so many gene therapies out there that can affect the genetics. There's systemic approaches that actually edit and augment your genetics. So it's super complicated in that regard, but as technology is progressing, we're getting more and more targeted effect. Now here's another question. Would you like to compete knowing that you're normal against someone who is perfect genetically? Is that fair to you? You can compete, but that person may have a perceived advantage. So at the end of the day, they'll discriminate you because of your genetics, which is exactly what happens in the movie. Right? Watch the movie. It can help you answer your question.
I watched it before.
It's cool, right?
It is super cool.
Yeah.
Between normal, natural breeding and those who is selected. And what I want to say is that I'm not talking about just select certain genes that can make you have higher IQ, something like that. What I mainly want to say is that if we can remove other genes that can cause like abnormal situations in your health situations, stuff like that, would that be like the very cool thing?
It would be cool, but again, you need to monitor. You need established parameters.
Yeah.
These things take a heck of a long time to establish. We're simply not there yet. We can't just, sure, genomic sequencing has taken up, picked up speed, right? We can get samples out and have a whole genome library of all the genes that you have, and then we can examine each and every gene mutation inside you. But here's the thing, you're already born, right? To do that before you're born implies a certain level of genetic engineering and artificial means. It is difficult. Now, philosophically, do I feel that you should do it? It's difficult to say. I see the pros, I see the cons. I think what we have right now as humanity is a pretty well-established system, a very well-leveled field. If it's a disease that is severely debilitating, I have no issue with that. Of course, go ahead, go for the treatment. If it's successful, great. But it can also be unsuccessful. How do you marry the two? So a balancing act.
Okay, great. Do we have some other questions?
How do a fertility specialist select which sperm for IVF amongst multi-million candidates?
Exactly. How? They do it through visual screening, mostly. If a sperm looks like he's swimming really well, great. He's a happy one. Let's go for him. If the egg looks, it's a pretty nice round shape, representative population, no problem there, let's go for it. You get what I mean? Here's the thing, guys. An abnormal sperm or an abnormal egg will not fertilize successfully. It will abort. So imagine this. Imagine this. At the blastocyst, sure. At a blastocyst level, right before implantation, if there is something wrong at that stage, the egg will terminate. The pregnancy will not happen. It won't even reach implantation. If something goes wrong at the implantation level, pregnancy will terminate. If something goes wrong at a developmental level, the pregnancy will terminate. So there are many fail-safe switches. Nature does not want you to produce a non-viable offspring because it will affect energy distribution and nutrient availability and all that. In a biological sense, the grown individual is more important than the fetus. Think about that. Good question.
Okay, do you have a question?
Here we go. All right, people are warming up.
Okay, there is a view that if the close relatives get married and give birth, it might cause some genetic disease. But there is another view says that if you have like enough generation, you can screen out the bad genetics. Is it academically?
So that's a question that I've asked, right? It's a philosophical one, it's a religious one as well, maybe, right? So here's the thing. Imagine we're all in early humans, we're in an isolated society, right? There aren't too many people around, your gene pool is restricted, you mate, you make babies. They're perfectly viable, then they spread around the world and then they meet each other and realize, hey, we're one big family, but we're not closely related. Then they have normal kids. We're playing on terminology, but yes, actually, if you're too closely related, your gene pool, you're sharing a gene pool basically. There's no variation, your genetics are too similar. So if you have an abnormality, that abnormality is shared with your partner, chances are they will come together and they will result in an offspring with the abnormality. But as time progresses, variation takes place, sure, maybe the chance of having an abnormal phenotype or genetic abnormality is maybe 10%, 5%. That affects the individual and the family. Their viability is affected. But in the long scheme of things, humanity will still persevere. So you want, in fact, you're trained biologically to find someone who has a dissimilar immune system to you. Humans are programmed like that. We visually are programmed to be attracted to people who are not similar to us. We are stimulated by their experiences, and those experiences dictate how they talk, how they interact with you. Psychological, many things, not just physical. Question?
Hi, after.
Hello.
You mentioned temperature quite a lot when you were talking about fertility. And obviously we're in a situation where world temperatures are going up, have gone up. I wonder if there's been any research looking at fertility and climate change and potential impact on species that you know about.
Very good question. To be honest, we're already losing a lot of species to climate change. High temperature, for example, butterflies, right? The butterfly species that we used to see when we were little kids, we no longer see them anymore, right? This is all due to temperature shifts affecting reproduction and also their natural environment, because it's not like we're living in a bubble. We're in an ecosystem. We are in a biosphere, so we rely on other organisms for continuity. Now humans, we have evolved to mess around with our natural environment. Yes, I'm very cold. I wore a long sleeve shirt today, right? So we are messing around with our evolution as is. If we're cold, we move, turn on the heater, so on and so forth. So in terms of human reproduction, we're just getting better and better. In terms of wild animal reproduction, different story. Very different story. So how do we see the future? Actually, we should have died out. Well, not died out, but like our population should have decreased by natural means a long, long time ago. Through natural disasters, through so many things. And our tendency to wage war should have ended us a long time ago. But we're still here, we're persevering. So that's a positive sign, right? And fertility issues are actually increasing. Did you know that? Fertility issues in populations are increasing. People simply cannot have babies. Firstly, they don't have time to make babies. They choose not to have babies. When they decide to have babies, maybe their stress load or the other environmental factors are so much that they cannot have viable babies. That's why they need artificial assistance. See that chain? Yeah. We need taxpayers. The government wants you to make babies. You know, Hong Kong government will give you $20,000 to make a baby. Sure, that's peanuts, but still, 20K is something, right? You can go on your next holiday, right? You get the point. It's a lifelong commitment. Not easy.
I think we have time for one or two more questions. Okay.
No one asked ethical question yet.
Oh,
Well, we have one, about the GMAT.
Ah, yeah, that's true, that's true. I guess I don't expect like a determined answer from you. I know your approach on this is mostly that's from the science angle, but with the assistant, the technology to have kids now. Recently I read an article on the news, Chinese medium newspaper. It's quite disturbing because it talked about some, I'm sure you're aware of the chain of business that support this kind of artificial way to have kids. And some, for example, there's a business that many, even single men, they just want to have babies, they just want to have kids, and then they pay for these business and bring a baby home. So I just see, I guess I look at the audience, they are all very young. Seems like we are, the older people can see this kind of social issue, right? You bring a baby, you make yourself happy, my life is filled, but what about the kid?
Yep.
And the person that in that story is a man at about 65.
Wow.
And he's single. He didn't have a wife, and he just thought he wants to have a kid to fulfill his life. So what about the kid? Right? So that, and also there are lots of issues with the homosexual couple. You know, I'm not saying they're I'm just talking about the social part. So I just wonder, what do you think of with all this science knowledge, technology knowledge? What's your view on this?
So my view is very broad-minded in that sense, because these issues touch on religious and societal norms, right? For example, in Western countries, not even in Western countries actually, same-sex marriage or single parenting is not really advocated. But that being said, it's not really discouraged in that sense either. But from a logical perspective, right? It depends on the individual really, right? Who's to say a single parent cannot raise a child? Who's to say a 65-year-old can do a better job than can do a worse job than a 20-year-old? It's now down to the individual. Are they ready? Psychologically, are they committed to it? Of course, the companies that have aided a child to be born to a 65-year-old, the 65-year-old should have a lot of money and should have a lot of resources and peripheral stuff to at least support the longevity of the child should he pass away. We're living in a very interesting time, and to give a concrete answer or even give a mixed opinion is very tricky, let's just say. But in my opinion, I think it's down to the screening. There has to be some legislation to make sure that the individual who wants to go through the process of getting a baby has the means and there has to be a logical necessity for it. Maybe the guy, maybe he wanted an heir to his company. Who knows, right? Many, many factors. So who's to say right and wrong?
That's true.
Yeah, I guess that's why in some science fiction stories, there's people have to apply for parenting licenses,
Yeah,
just like a driver's license.
To be honest, if you ask my opinion, I think parenting licenses, I think there should be some screening at least. Because it shows you the psychological conditioning of the parent. Are they fit to give birth to a kid and do justice to the kid. So there has to be a broad peer review process, right? What is my right may not be the same right as you, right? What I think is right may not be right to you. So multiple factors.
Thanks so much.
Very, very, very difficult question.
Yeah, but really fascinating. So our time is almost up. You might have noticed I put up a QR code to ask everyone to please give feedback. And so I'd also like to take this time to say thank you to Dr. Amin. And please, everybody, let's give him some applause. And thank you very much for
If you
having me.
don't mind, can you get us on screen?
Oh, yeah, we'll do, you
Oh, yeah, with the audience.
yeah, okay, or here.
Or you go stand over there and
Oh, sure.
you with the audience. Okay.
Okay.
Okay.